Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about an upcoming cool down with an overall summary of April and a look ahead into the first half of May. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. Here's, first of all, this is your April is in the books. This is the first day of May, Saturday. And I figure I would take you a step back and give you an overall summary on how April played out. Here's the look of the average mean temperatures. You can definitely see out west, we've been predominantly above average with several degrees between the average high and the average low temperature. Where we've seen the cooler temperatures in the midsection of the country, that dipped all the way down in the plains, into the Texas, into Oklahoma. Much of the southeast and even Florida was technically below average. So your above average temperatures were into Wisconsin, into Michigan, and much of the Ohio Valley, getting into the Northeast as far as your average mean temperatures go. Here's a look at the precipitation. You can definitely see out west, we've been predominantly drier than average with some much needed rainfall out there. These systems that came across, a lot of this fell in the form of snow. Where the systems really became active was down here in Texas and getting into the central part of the U.S. And those well above average anomaly, rainfall rates kicked in. And down here by the coast, where they had ample amount of, higher ocean content to deal with, they had those well above average precipitation down here and into the deep south. So here's a look at the actual snowfall that actually occurred into April. There was your zone right here in the upper level regions of the mountains. Much of Colorado into Wyoming, into Montana saw snow. Some of the snow swung across in the central U.S. and we had some leftover effect into the Ohio Valley, and portions of the Northeast definitely saw some snow in April. So let me kind of walk you through. Here's the overall teleconnections going forward. So you can definitely see this is the AO, which is the Arctic oscillation. It's been predominantly negative, and that's been the culprit while we've seen those cooler shots filtering into the central U.S. with that dip in the jet stream, still allowing those colder temperatures to kind of filter in every once in a while. But you can definitely see by the time we get into, say, May 10th timeframe, that index tends to get more neutral, and that will lift the jet stream and to bring the cooler temperatures well to the north. And you can see that definitely the NAO implies the same thing. It's been predominantly negative. Those have been basically congruent with each other. With this being negative, that's why we've seen that blocking in the Greenland block take place. And when these systems came across, that has been one of the main culprits why these systems have tended to be slower than average, with this negative index into play, and it more or less creates a block. And so that increases the rainfall rates down to the south, because these systems don't progress as fast as they normally would if this index was, more neutral or especially positive. But you can definitely see the trend as we go into, say, a May 11th timeframe with both indices. We definitely see a buckle where those, go back up into more or less neutral, more into positive range, and that will allow the warmer temperatures to filter in and lock in more predominantly in the southern regions and lift the colder temperatures a lot further northward. So as we go into time, here is the Southern Oscillation Index. So I've been following this, I pretty much put this into play in my repertoire to kind of give you an overall picture of how all these things play out. So we talked about this, we were in a La Nina, all the way back in September. As when February hit, we saw a noticeable trend trending towards more of an Enso neutral. You can see as predominantly was positive back then in February, but the trend was noticeable into March. That continued into April. What this does is it creates the southern jet gets active, and that allows that southern jet to be, as the system comes across with a negative NAO, allowed it to slow down and gave you all those above average precipitation anomalies well down to the south like I showed you. And that trend basically continues going into May, because you can definitely see here's the 30-day average. We're just about in end zone neutral standards, and the 90-day average has predominantly been creeping towards step by step, getting a little bit closer to an end zone neutral going forward. And then the daily drop of -14 just says, hey, we're continuing that trend of more of an end zone neutral as we go towards May. So here's the overall outlook as far as the temperatures go for the next 5 days average. So if you take the average between now and May the 6th, you can definitely see out west, we see above average anomalies out west where that trend continues for them. The colder temperatures, the cooler temperatures are still locked in place over the central U.S. with several degrees below average temperatures. And down here to the south, down to the southeast, we see some above average anomalies to the southeast. But as we go into that for precipitation standards, all that rain has been well to the south. We saw a ton of rain in Texas. We're seeing it today again, and those are well above average. Precipitation anomalies are going to be locked in place down into much of the coast, into the southern regions. It remains dry for the next 5 to 6 days out west. There's your more or less northwest flow up here with the colder temperatures and the precipitation. A lot of this is going to form as actually some snowfall, a little bit of it but yeah, you can definitely see where the above average anomalies will be as far as precipitation. But as we go into the 6th and to May 11th time frame, like I showed you, that the NAO and the AO remains buckled. So that's going to allow those colder temperatures to filter a little bit further south. Now we're seeing, there's 5 to 10 degrees below average anomalies here. For portions of the Ohio Valley getting into the southeast. So that's your big cool down that's going to be on the way going into as we definitely reach into May 6th time frame. It's going to be locked in place for several days with those well below average anomalies out here into the Ohio Valley and getting into portions of the southeast as well as the mid-Atlantic, and that will start to creep into the northeastern states. And then as the remains predominantly warmer out here into the desert southwest, and as we look at the precipitation values, down to the south, you see well out west remains dry. That's not going to change, unfortunately, for you guys out west. There's your flow. Continue with that same pattern because the NAO and the NAO remains negative, and then that portions of the south, Southern Oscillation Index remains more end zone neutral, so that keeps the flow alive down south in your southern regions. And May is predominantly your wettest month of the year. So we're looking at some well above average precipitation for these areas into the south and much of the southeast, getting into the Tennessee Valley and Kentucky, going into Virginia and West Virginia. As we get into that second week of May, as we go into the third week of May, like I showed you before, with that NAO and the AO buckling, going back more towards neutral, going back into positive range, that will lift the jet stream, that will amplify the temperatures down here in the southern regions and put the cooler temperatures a lot further north. So this setup right here looks to be a little bit more severe in nature. So I do think we have a little bit of a respite in the severe front a little bit. We still have several days, coming up in the next couple of days, but that second week is going to be fairly dry with, severe weather, but I think it ramps back up for that third week going to, the May 11th, May 16th time frame. This setup right here looks a little bit more susceptible for severe weather on kind of more of a larger scale basis. And you can definitely look at some of the Cape values by then as they start to creep up. You have that southwest flow kicking in. You've got cooler temperatures in the north. You've got that clashing effect, and then the teleconnections go back positive. So that's a little bit more predominant setup of more severe weather going back into Texas, going back into Oklahoma, going back into the Plains region. So that's the time frame I'm going to be looking at, more of a severe weather outbreak into on a larger scale basis from that 11th to 16th type time frame. And as going forward, here's the 16th, kind of gives you an idea back in the plane where some of the instability may be, with those definitely warmer temperatures to be able to take advantage of, and those cooler temperatures to the north to have that clashing effect. So here's your precipitation anomalies over that time frame as well. So you have above average precipitation in portions of Texas and the deep south, going into parts of the plain, parts of the Ohio Valley, into the Tennessee Valley. Again, like a broken record, sorry guys, you're out west, you remain dry out west from much of the west coast here, and then you remain above average precipitation with Florida pretty much dry as well. So you had your rains in Florida. I do think you're going to be going towards a little bit more drier period, at least for the first half of the first half of May. So here's your precipitation going forward for those next 15 days. And you can definitely see out west, it's trying to buy a drop of rain in California and much of the desert Southwest here. There are some, hints of rain, but that's not much. I mean, these greens, you're only talking, a quarter inch, and this is over a 2-week time span. So that's not much rain at all. So these rains up here are going to be predominantly in the midsection of the country, much of the southeast, going to the Ohio Valley, going to the northeast, where they predominantly have been. And like I mentioned, much of Florida will be more or less below average rainfall for you guys coming up for the first half of May. Here's your snow with those colder temperatures still in place. It's still going to allow that jet stream to buckle, bringing in some of that colder air. So I do expect snow to still fly, especially in the higher elevations in the mountain regions of Idaho, Montana, getting into the Four Corners regions and getting into portions of Colorado in the mountain regions. And then your snow will be predominantly up in the higher elevations up in the northeast, where you could see some snow fly, for the first half of May, getting into portions of Maine. But for the most part, your colder temperatures are going to be almost, as you go into the, like that second week of the 11th to 16th time frame, that buckles. So it's going to be a lot harder to beat snowing after that time frame. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. That gives you kind of an overall summary of how I think the first half of May is going to play out. So I appreciate you watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.